So how does this process work? Well, in the classroom, you can boil down the idea of knowledge building in 5 distinct stages. The first one is selecting a topic that is of interest to the teacher and the student. And this type of topic is one where the teacher looks forward to working with, because the kids really look forward to working with it as well. So usually that's going to be a nice topic where the kids are going to ask a lot of questions. The kids are going to be curious. They're going to want to research more. So that is the first thing that I think a teacher needs to identify in their classroom. Stage 2 involves the idea of formulating the questions and ideas that surround this particular topic. So in that regard, the teacher sets up conditions in their classroom, whether it's through field trips, guest speakers, video clips, just general questions that the students might have already around what it is that really interests them within that topic. So you formulate a whole series of questions that the kids are now in charge of actually being responsible for answering, as opposed to the questions coming from the teacher or the questions coming from the textbook. Stage 3 is the selection of promising questions that the kids are actually going to work with. As a teacher, you're going to find that the kids produce all sorts of questions, low-level questions and high-level questions. And you have to filter these questions. Some of them are going to be better than others in deepening knowledge. So the idea of a promising question is simply one that is going to lead to much deeper knowledge compared to low-level questions that might be fact-based. So an example might be, for a fact-based question, how old is the universe? It'd be a certain age. But if you ask a question, how do we know how old the universe is? That brings it up to the promising level quite significantly. Stage 4 of the process is building knowledge in knowledge form. And the idea there is to provide students a working space where they can share their ideas publicly, so that the students can then build upon each other's knowledge as they're progressing with their questions. So in my classroom, one of the big rules about the process of building knowledge is always working a question and leaving a question, so that there's something that's left behind that actually links back to the original big question. So you'll start seeing a whole bunch of build-ons with the kids when they actually start building their knowledge, leaving a question, building some more knowledge, and researching and building a question. And that's when you start seeing the deepening of the knowledge that the students are actually producing. Stage 5, evaluating a knowledge building environment. This one is a little bit tricky, but it is one that is full of promise. The idea of knowledge building can be somewhat resistant to pencil and paper testing, because the kids are then in charge of their own learning, and where it is that they want to take their knowledge is kind of up to them, within reason. I understand that the students have a curriculum to follow, and as a teacher, your job is to make sure that they are following set parts of that curriculum, so they're getting at that knowledge that you want them to know about. But there's also the part that you want them to be able to investigate, to be able to be curious about areas that might go beyond the curriculum. So the evaluation process is something that can be done either through an oral communication with the students, where the group sits down and discusses their greatest knowledge advances. It could also be a written response, where the students use what's called a literature review to be able to use each other's work and to stitch together the trajectory of their knowledge, but based on what each student contributes. So you definitely have this collaborative knowledge part to it. This is an area that I think is still open for debate and research about how one evaluates it, because you'll find that when you build knowledge in this fashion, it takes you in unusual and interesting ways. And I think that needs to be valued, and it needs to be acknowledged, not only by the teacher but also by the student, especially if it goes beyond perhaps the curriculum that the teacher has set out. There is possibly a stage 6 to this process, and that is the idea that students will come up with questions and ideas that the experts are coming up with, but they come up with it independently. Or for that matter, they come up with a brand new, unique idea that no expert has come up with. So that, I think, needs to be valued as well. And the students have given a number of examples of this idea generation that's all of their own.